Bo Byram is the ideal trade target for the New York Rangers, and they need to be all over this.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1318 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. So I want to go ahead and kick off today's episode by talking about a potential trade target for the New York Rangers, a player that, per Elliot Friedman, has been made available by the Sabres. They are said to be gauging the market. That player would, of course, be 23-year-old defenseman Bo Byram. So we're going to kick off today's episode by talking about Bo a little bit, and then we're going to move on to a couple of unrestricted free agents to be this offseason guys that could make some sense for the Rangers. We'll give both of them a fair trial. I'll just tell you right now, the first one is going to be Jamie Benn. The second is going to be Vladislav Gavrikov. Now, Benn mostly expected to stay with Dallas, but that doesn't mean we can't have some fun here and talk about the possibility of him becoming a New York Ranger. But we begin, once again, with sort of the man of the hour right now, Bo Byram. It's all eyes are on the conference finals right now, as opposed to, off-season moves. I mean, obviously, we're talking about the Ranger off-season for the next whole bunch of episodes here. But when you see that a 23-year-old, top defenseman is going to be available, I think that certainly gets your attention. I'd stop short of calling him a superstar, but he is still just getting started in his NHL career. He is coming off of a career best season. And clearly, if he is available, and it sounds like he is, the Sabres are once again said to be gauging interest, then there's going to be a lot of teams that are interested in, making a deal with Buffalo and bringing him in. And I think the Rangers, like I said in the intro, should be all over this. Now, the obvious downside of trading for Byram or trading for anybody, as opposed to adding somebody in free agency, is that you have to give something up to get the player that you're trying to get. And I don't think Byram is going to come cheaply. I mentioned a second ago that I think multiple teams will be in on Byram. And if you're the Sabres, you're going to do everything you can to try to cause a bidding war and get as many teams in on him as you possibly can, and then take the deal that you like the best. But, if you're the Rangers here, you got to consider the fact that it is a thin free agent market. That's been a theme on this podcast. It will continue to be a theme going forward. It is a thin free agent market. There's only so many defensemen available, and I think you owe it to yourself to try to think outside the box a little bit here. We know the Rangers and Sabres, all those rumors years ago that the Rangers might try to land Jack Eichel, and that never obviously ended up happening. At least not yet. Eichel is a free agent after this upcoming season, but that's not to say that they can't do a deal here for Byram if the cards fall the right way. As far as, what you're looking at, what the cost would be and the contract situation for Byram, he is in the final year of a 2-year deal, which carries an average annual value of $3.85 million per season. So that's more than reasonable for Byram. And it also kind of helps the Rangers a little bit because they've only got so much cap space to begin with. So it's kind of hard for them to go big game hunting this offseason. So somebody like Byram could obviously make some sense. Byram will also be an RFA with arbitration rights at the end of this upcoming season. And it'll be 2 off seasons from now when Byram becomes a UFA for the first time in his career. But as far as the player, for anybody that might not be, completely familiar with Byram's game, former number 4 overall pick by the Colorado Avalanche all the way back in 2019. He has now played in 246 career NHL regular season games, 33 goals, 77 assists, 110 points. So close to a half point per game for his career for Byram. And this is for somebody who doesn't always have the biggest role. He was kind of down on the depth chart in Colorado, and lo and behold, the same thing has happened in Buffalo. But I mentioned 110 points and getting close to a half point per game territory. This is despite the fact that only 10 of his 110 career points have occurred on the power play. This is somebody that gets the job done and can give you some offense 5v5. He's also got 303 blocked shots for his career, 337 hits, 63 takeaways against 153 giveaways. Now, this past season, you'd probably have to say career best, 82 games, 7 goals, a career-high 31 assists, a career-high 38 points, a career best plus 11, career-high 22 minutes and 42 seconds time on the ice per night. That was the second highest on Buffalo this past season. A career-high 116 block shots, also 75 hits. The one something of a red flag here is the takeaway to giveaway ratio. 15 takeaways against 84 giveaways, easily the worst ratio of his career. I get the feeling it could have something to do with the fact that, maybe he's cheating for a little bit more offense and trying to get more involved offensively. His offensive numbers would certainly spell that out as well. Not an ideal ratio there, but obviously still a good player, in spite of that. And worth pointing out as well that he was a member of the Colorado Avalanche Stanley Cup championship team back in 2022. And in 27 career playoff games for Byram, no goals, 12 assists, but he is a plus 16 in those 27 games. So what would the Rangers need to give up? This is where it really starts to get interesting and maybe even a little bit scary if you're looking to acquire Byram. One thing that helps here, I think, as far as a potential deal between the Rangers and the Sabres, is the Sabres actually have a good amount of salary cap space. It feels like every team in the NHL, when we're looking at potential, free agent signings or trades or whatever it might be, every team has very precious little cap space to work with. That is not true of the Sabres. Like I said, projected to have about $21.4 million in cap space. So they could take on some money if they so desire. As far as what the Rangers would give up and what they'd be willing to give up and what it might ultimately cost, I don't think you have to worry too much about the Rangers giving up one of their truly top prospects. I don't think they're going to trade Gabe Perreault to bring in Byram. I don't think there's any way they could, would, or should do that. Same thing for Brandon Hoffman. I can't imagine he would be part of the trade. Somebody like Brett Berard could be part of the return package for the Sabres, and I really like Berard. He's been a favorite of mine for some time among the Ranger prospects, but if you're going to get a player like Byram, you're going to have to give something up. I think maybe Adam Sikora, former second-round pick by the Rangers, who's been with the Wolfpack, he's certainly a possibility as well. I could see them maybe being interested in Braden Schneider as part of the return. I don't think they would do Byram for Schneider straight up. I wouldn't want to see the Rangers give up Schneider. I'd like to see him stick around for a while, certainly at least this next season, especially when he's signed for a very reasonable 2.2 or 2.3 million, whatever it is for Braden Schneider. You could always look to trade a draft pick or two if you're the Rangers and land Byram that way. But it is worth pointing out the Rangers have only one second-round draft pick in the next 3 years. It's actually this year's draft that they have a second-rounder and then no second-rounders the 2 years after that. As far as first-rounders go, we know, very well established fact here, the Rangers are not going to have a first-rounder either this year or next year, depending on when they give that pick that they owe to the Pittsburgh Penguins, whatever they decide there. As far as the cost, I wanted to look back at the last time that Byram was traded because it wasn't that long ago. It was barely over a year ago. It was about 14 or 15 months ago. And he didn't really get that much of a return. It was basically one young player for another young player, just two guys that I guess in a way could use a change of scenery, even though Byram had some success in Colorado. But all it took back then when that trade was made, it was Byram for Casey Middlestat straight up. And Middlestat is still young. I believe he's still only 24. So he would have been 23 at the time or maybe 22. And, solid player, but I'm kind of surprised that was all it took. So maybe I'm overestimating how much Byram would command. But again, you're talking about a very thin free agent market, and you're talking about a situation where teams across the NHL have precious few options when it comes to improving their blue line, right? I mean, there's only so many guys. Maybe there are teams around the league that don't want to pony up the dough for a Provorov, for a Gavrikov, for one of these, free agent defensemen. I've been talking about that too. I don't think the Rangers should overextend themselves for these free agent defensemen that are out there that are good players but not great players. But Byram, I mean, look, it's only so often that you get a situation where you get a 23-year-old defenseman who seems to be, a rising player in this league, somebody who, again, I wouldn't call him a superstar just yet, but there's obvious upside there, and he's already a very solid player. Even if he were to plateau, I think you could live with what he's going to give you. As far as how he would fit in with the Rangers, I've talked about in the past, and I alluded to this just a second ago, that I prefer the Rangers to sign a veteran free agent defenseman to a shorter contract rather than reaching for a Provorov or a Gavrikov this offseason. I just think they're going to be too expensive and command too long of a contract. Does Byram count as a veteran? I mean, he's only 23, but then again, he has played 5 seasons in the NHL. Either way, I do like the idea of going for Byram. On one hand, there is that part of me that prefers, more of like a rough and tumble defenseman, somebody that's going to bring energy and bring meanness and, bring that sandpaper and call it whatever you want to call it. That to me would be like an ideal target for the Rangers. But then again, beggars can't be choosers in a situation like this. I mentioned just a second ago that you've got a 23-year-old defenseman who might be a rising star in this league, who it sounds like, going by what Elliot Friedman had to say, is readily available. The Sabres are looking to make something happen here and certainly willing to listen to offers. But if Byram were to join the Rangers, I see him probably being Adam Fox's partner. We've talked about that too. He is a lefty shot, is Byram. So that works in his favor as well as far as the appeal goes with the New York Rangers. I think you would pair the two of them together right away. I guess there is some redundancy there. You do have two offensive, defensemen together, but you know what? Let's give Adam Fox the best defense partner possible going into this next season. And I think that would be Byram if the Rangers were to acquire him. I think also you'd probably be looking at Byram on, I would say, the second power play unit. But if you really wanted to shake things up and you really wanted to try something different and you really wanted to reinvigorate what I think a lot of us believe is a stale power play unit for the New York Rangers, throw Byram and Fox together on the top unit and go with 3 forwards. I know teams typically don't do that, but there's no law against it. You could try it. And again, you saw how miserable that power play was at the end of this past season, really for most of the season as a whole, but especially toward the end of this past season when the Rangers special teams play just absolutely deteriorated. So yeah, I think there's a lot to like here. The other thing I'll throw out there too is Byram would seemingly be a cheaper alternative to K'Andre Miller. Right now, they're basically making the same amount of money. Byram, for this upcoming season, is locked in at $3.85 million. K'Andre Miller right now just wrapped up his contract that paid him $3.87 million per season. So it's basically identical. But Miller right now is an RFA with arbitration rights. He is said to be seeking a substantial pay increase. He'll get an increase of some kind at the very least. But the bottom line is next season, Miller's going to be quite a bit more expensive than Byram. And something else to consider here. If you were to trade for Byram and bring him in, that probably spells the end of K'Andre Miller with the Rangers. But whatever you give up to get Byram, like say they give up a first rounder to get Byram, right? You could probably then turn around and trade K'Andre Miller for a first rounder and get that pick right back. And so at that point, the draft pick in both deals, the whole thing is kind of a wash because you lose a draft pick, but you also add a draft pick. And you've now gone from K'Andre Miller to Bo Byram, not to mention the fact that Byram is cheaper. I love this. Make this happen. Find a way to get this trade done. I would probably give up a first rounder to make this happen. When you consider the cost, obviously he's on an inexpensive contract right now. He's very young. He's on the rise. Good God, man. The Rangers need to be all over this. But in just a second, we're going to keep everything rolling. We're going to shift our attention to a couple of free agents from around the NHL, some guys that I think could be interesting fits with the Rangers, and give them a fair trial and talk about whether I like the fit or I don't like the fit. We'll get to that in just a second, beginning with Jamie Benn. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is very easy to lose track. That is where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. You've got all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long-term goals. There's also easy collaboration. Managing your money with your partner is easier than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. On Locked On New York Rangers, big shout out to the everydayers. As always, we just did an episode, the one right before this one, the top 5 best Ranger wins of the season. We're also going to look at the other side of that coin and try to figure out what were the worst 5 losses of the season for the Rangers. I think that'll be cathartic to just kind of vent about this season one last time. And, then obviously we move on. Also going to be doing some more draft talk. We'll do a mock draft at some point. A lot of fun times coming ahead on Locked On New York Rangers here. But we continue today's episode by shifting our attention to a couple of free agents from around the league that I think are very intriguing for one reason or another. And, I'll have my thoughts on whether it's a fit with the Rangers or not. And we begin with Jamie Benn. Now, let me preface this entire section by saying that, yes, it is far more likely than not, it would seem, that Jamie Benn will remain a member of the Dallas Stars for this upcoming season. And that might also explain why you don't see a lot of Ranger fans mentioning Jamie Benn. Even like when you look at, top free agents from around the league, those kinds of articles out there, there's not a ton of buzz about Jamie Benn because I think the prevailing belief here is that a deal will get done between the Stars and their captain for the last 12 years here. So I understand that. I mean, you look at everything that Ben's done with the Stars. He's been to the Stanley Cup final with them. He might get back again this season. We will see. 2-time All-Star, 2-time member of the NHL's first All-Star team, Art Ross Trophy winner back in 2015. And like I said, did make it to the Stanley Cup finals in 2020 before they lost to Tampa in 6 games. And I'm not really sure exactly where things stand between him and the Stars. I do know there was a report from TSN earlier this season that indicated that the Stars had approached Jamie Benn about an extension this offseason, and he said to them that he just wants to go ahead and let his contract play out. And that's what he's been doing because there's been no extension since then. Another report in January said that there is interest on both sides, in Benn remaining with the Dallas Stars. And again, I think that is certainly the most likely outcome here, but never say never. He is still a UFA to be, and you never know what can happen when that's the case. As far as like his fit with the Rangers, if he were to somehow make his way to Broadway, he would check a lot of boxes. We know that Benn is somebody that's going to go out there, play with an edge, play with a nastiness, play some straight line hockey, get to the net, get under the skin of opponents, mix it up, the kind of stuff, the kind of fire and energy and mean streak that the Rangers could certainly use. Even when he's getting a little bit older here, I believe he's now 36. That is still the case. And there is some, pause there anytime you're dealing with somebody that's getting a little bit older for sure. But I still think Benn, is a good player. If you can have him on a shorter contract, maybe he could make some sense for the Rangers. It's certainly possible. Leadership. My God, do the Rangers need leadership? And you're talking about somebody here who has been the captain of his team for the last 12 seasons. So I think he certainly checks that box as well. He'll still hit anything that moves. You look at his career, 1,984 hits and 1,192 career games. And this past season, again, even getting into his mid and even his late 30s here, or soon to be in his late 30s, 114 hits in 80 games. He's a very committed defensive player as well. He's gotten some Selke votes the last couple of seasons here. Last year, he was 27th in Selke voting. The year before that, he was 34th. So, I mean, in general, the Rangers need more players that are going to be committed to defense because we just didn't see it this past year. A lot of lazy back-checking, a lot of non-existent back-checking. Benn would check that box as well. And he's also a proven playoff performer. 115 games, 28 goals, 52 assists, 80 points, and is a +6 for his career in the postseason. Also steps up the game physically as well. 115 playoff games. He has 307 hits in those games. So this guy is right in his element when it comes to playoff hockey. And you would expect that. I mean, you just take a look at the guy and he looks like somebody that's born to play playoff hockey. Something else that I also appreciate when it comes to Benn, guy is an absolute beast when it comes to winning faceoffs. He's at 52.8% for his career, which is not like an overwhelming success rate, but you look at what he's done in the past 6 seasons from most recent to least recent. These are his success rates from the most recent season to the least recent season. This season, 56%. The season before that, 61.2%. The year before that, 60.1%. Then 55.2, 56.1, and 55.8. This guy dominates. You need a face-off to be won. You get this man on the ice. It's as simple as that. And, like I said, the Rangers need some edge. They need some toughness. They need some bleep you to their game. Who was it on the Rangers that said that a couple of years ago? That there was somebody on the team that said we needed to play with a little bit more bleep you. And now I can't remember who said it. That's going to drive me crazy. If you remember, leave it in the YouTube comments section. I'll try to mention it in the next episode if I remember. And look, bottom line, again, it feels like a serious long shot that Jamie Benn is going to leave the Stars for the Rangers or anywhere else for that matter. But it's the offseason. We're having some fun here. It's an interesting thought, to add a veteran leader like this and somebody that plays the kind of hard-nosed hockey that the Rangers could really use. Not to mention the fact that he still scores. I think this past season, he ended up with 80 games played, 16 goals scored, 33 assists for a total of 49 points. So that's certainly not too shabby, to say the very least. And look, again, the very high likelihood is he stays with the Dallas Stars. I think both sides probably would like to get something done, but it's fun to talk about. And like I said, interesting fit with the New York Rangers would Jamie Benn be if he were to somehow end up on Broadway. But we're going to keep everything rolling just a second. We got one other UFA to discuss today before we call it. That's going to be Vladislav Gavrikov, a defenseman who is on the radar of a lot of New York Ranger fans. Personally, I'm not really feeling it. I'll explain why in just a second. All right, let's go keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. We'll close out today by talking about Vladislav Gavrikov, defenseman for the Los Angeles Kings. And a lot of what I said about Ivan Provorov a couple episodes ago, I believe 2 episodes before this one, if I'm not mistaken, it applies here as well. I don't really get the hype. They're both good defensemen, don't get me wrong, and they're both lefty defensemen. So there's some appeal there, too. I think if either one of them were to be signed by the Rangers, you could very easily see one of them slotting in alongside Adam Fox. But this, to me, Gavrikov, seems like somebody who, like Provorov, is destined to be overpaid due to the fact that there is a thin free agent market this offseason. And for me, it's not good business to reach for a player like that. And I know that the Raider defensemen were pretty bad this past season, and there's a lot of defensemen on this team that are facing uncertain futures, and you want to add some depth, and you want to bring in somebody that can make a difference, and you want to patch up these holes that we saw this past season. And certainly either one of Provorov or Gavrikov could do that for you, but again, he's not going to be, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, in my opinion, neither of those two players will be worth the contract that they end up signing. There's going to be some bloated contracts in free agency this offseason. We talked about this with Sam Bennett the other day. I like the idea of the Rangers signing him, but at that cost, at that length of contract, I think he's going to end up getting a way bigger contract than people realize. And the same could apply to, defensemen such as Gavrikov. You look at what he's currently making, he's concluding, or has concluded now that the Kings are out of the playoffs, a 2-year deal that carried a cap hit of $5.875 million per season. That already sounds too high for Gavrikov, for me at least. Now, maybe it's not, and you do have to consider the fact that the salary cap continues to rise. So, $5.87 million, that's not as big of a deal as it would have been, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, however far you want to go back. And I understand that too, but he's probably in line for a raise. And I just don't know that the Rangers, with their precious little cap space, should be spending that kind of money on Byram. Now, we talked about Byram earlier. I've still got him in my mind. On Gavrikov. Byram I like. Go ahead and trade for Byram. There are some things to like here, though, when it comes to Gavrikov. He is one of the better defensemen in free agency, as we've established. There's obviously some size there. 6'3", 220 pounds. He can kill some penalties. He's an absolute workhorse. He averaged a career high this past season, 23 minutes, 5 seconds time on the ice per night with the Kings. Only Drew Doughty had more time on the ice per night, and he only played 30 games this past season. So, in a lot of ways, Gavrikov was kind of the guy. He was the workhorse, and he was the guy that the Kings wanted out there, when it comes to crunch time, and that's great. Similar to Provorov, though, I have to throw this out there. It doesn't seem like Gavrikov uses his size to his advantage the way that we would certainly like to see him do it, were he to become a New York Ranger. And Gavrikov is even bigger than Provorov. They're both, obviously big defensemen. Gavrikov, 451 hits in 435 games while averaging 21 minutes, 12 seconds of ice time per night. And like Provorov, Gavrikov, too, has seen a dip in his physicality, at least when it comes to hits. And I know there's other ways to measure overall physicality. I get that. But when you're looking at the hits here, this past season, he had, or rather, I'm going to go back to 2021, 2022 as a basis of comparison. He had 124 hits in 80 games with the Jackets in that season. This past season with the Kings, just 50 hits in 82 games. So he's not somebody that's really out there throwing his weight around, at least not in the way of actual hits, that count in the stat book. He will block shots. You have to like that. You have to respect that. Anybody that's willing to do that. 676 block shots in 435 games. And that also includes a career high 140 block shots this past season with the Kings. So there are certain things to like. One thing, though, that I think you can count against him if you want to compare him to Provorov, less offense to his game than Provorov. 435 games, 29 goals, 106 assists, 135 points. So he'll chip in here and there, but he's not somebody that's like an offensive specialist as a defenseman. He is a plus 24 for his career. This past season, a career best plus 26. Really, this just comes down to, for me, the Rangers, again, being tight up against the salary cap and me believing that there are better ways to spend this money than on somebody like Gavrikov. It's not because I think he's a bad player. It's not because I don't think he can help the Rangers. It's just that at the end of the day, he's not going to be worth what he ends up getting in free agency. Maybe he will be, and he'll shut me up and whatever. But I just don't think the Rangers are in position to give out, what would probably be an inflated contract to somebody who is a good defenseman, but certainly not an elite defenseman. And here's something else that I got to throw out there. And this can apply to Gavrikov or Provorov or really any free agent this offseason. If it's somebody that you like, but you're not like, you don't love him as a GM, you got to consider what's going to happen next offseason. The free agent class for the next NHL offseason is absolutely wild. I knew it was better than this year's. I looked at the list, though, and my God, I mean, it's pretty crazy the amount of players that, at least as of now, are set to be free agents next offseason. Connor McDavid has 1 year left on his contract, and at some point this offseason, we're going to do an episode where we talk about the dream, the Rangers landing Connor McDavid. Is that in any way possible? We'll see. And that we could have a lot of fun with that for sure. Jack Eichel. Now, yeah, he's getting older, but he's still not even 30 yet. The Rangers missed out on him years ago. He will be a free agent after next season, at least as of now. No extension signed with Vegas or anything like that. You've also got Kirill Kaprizov. He's got 1 year left on his contract before he becomes a UFA. And Adrian Kempe, a personal favorite of mine with the LA Kings. He will, at least as of now, be a UFA after this upcoming season. None of those four players that I just mentioned have even turned 30 yet. And there are other free agents in addition to those guys that I just mentioned that could really help the Rangers, really help another team. Do you really want to miss out on one of those players I just mentioned because you reach too much for Vladislav Gavrikov or Ivan Provorov and you're paying them too much money per season? And oh, whoops, now we can't sign McDavid. Oh, whoops, now we can't sign Adrian Kempe, whoever it might be. That's not something that I would look to have the Rangers do. Even re-signing Panarin to me is more appealing, and he will be older. I get it, fine. But to me, re-signing Panarin is a more attractive option next season than going out and getting, Provorov this offseason, Gavrikov this offseason. I just don't think that it's worth it. And again, the UFA class, if you have a chance to look it up, go ahead and do that because it's just absolutely nuts next offseason. You could even throw, and I'm not campaigning to sign these guys because they're going to be old, Alex Ovechkin is a free agent after next season. So too is Evgeny Malkin, two longtime Ranger nemesises. And I don't think the Rangers would sign either one of them. It's probably not worth it. There's rumors that this might be Ovechkin's last season in the NHL this upcoming season anyway. So we'll see how that goes. But just food for thought there. Don't blow a whole bunch of money this offseason and then regret it by not being able to sign a superstar, a big-time difference maker next offseason. The Rangers have to avoid that scenario. But yep, that's kind of where things stand as far as, these potential free agent targets for the Rangers. We'll continue to look at free agents going forward this offseason. Again, more draft talk. We're really looking forward to doing a mock draft. Already started doing some research there and looking into players that I think could be a fit with the New York Rangers. But obviously, we'll save that for another day. We'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, that is @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.